You'll hear me say quite often that one of the most powerful channels of energy to draw from as fuel for any of your craft work or psychic strengthening is ancestral power. So in this little chat, I'm going to first explain what I mean by that and then second, refute it, contradict myself, and assure you that it's by no means your only option. In traditional East Asian forms of witchcraft and ceremonial magic, connection to your ancestral lineage has always been expressed as kind of a requirement. Real talk, right? Historically and culturally, ancestors are always involved. Incantations, more often than not, involve calling upon your ancestors for help. When you curse people for some reason, you've got to curse their ancestors or have your ancestors curse theirs. When you do anything at all, it's got to be on behalf of your ancestors or in the name of your ancestors. You talk to them, you ask them for favors, you feed them too. Do we have time for a story? Yeah, we have time for a story. So my maternal grandmother loved McDonald's French fries. If she had things her way, that would be her entire diet. In her old age, of course, no one actually allowed her to eat French fries, so then she wanted fries even more. On her deathbed, and I can still picture every detail with such crisp clarity of memory. She didn't have her teeth in, so her gums were her mouth was kind of concave. And she's tilting her head up and trying really hard, exerting a lot of effort to try to talk to us. She had all these tubes stuck in her, and she had pulled out her feeding tube too, I remember, and she was mumbling and trying really hard to make sound. Everyone leaned in, thinking last words, right? Grandma was about to say something super deep and important and possibly life-changing. And she goes, well, in Taiwanese, French fries, French fries. So, of course, the older cousins rushed off to buy her French fries. I can't remember if that was her last meal. To chat with my maternal grandmother when I need her to be present. All I need in terms of offerings is McDonald's French fries. I observe this in so many cultures around the world. From the conversations I've had, I really believe there's something fundamentally true here about psychic power and connection to ancestors. You can look at Latin American cultures, Afro-Caribbean, definitely all across Asia Pacific. There is this belief in a correlation of some kind, a connection between your closeness to your ancestors and your personal power. The enduring wealth of family dynasties are explained through ancestral connections. Decline and downfall of a family's collected power is explained by lack of or broken ancestor connections. So in most Asian mystery traditions, there's this belief in soul dualism. Every whole is a yin and a yang, right? Yin-yang. You've got heaven and earth as figurative or elemental concepts. The soul's yang, which houses the person's karma, continues on in the cycle of reincarnation. The soul's yin, which houses memory, rejoins the thing, pillar of concentrated, united, same energy, frequency, force field thing. And so long as you inherit that genetic DNA and soul DNA, you will always be psychically connected, or you can say astrally connected. Your astral self is always going to have access to that ancestral pillar of power, which is made up of the yin component of soul. And all of that is part of the astral earth, the spiritual unseen component to the physical material earth or universe that we're a part of. So, because you're connected to it by your DNA, it's access you've got in your head and, dare I say, in your bones. It is part of your potential of personal power. And a witch, a shaman, anyone dancing between the lines of physical reality and astral reality is going to be someone who has some intuition that this ancestor thing is probably important. Witches, for the most part, and here I'm referring maybe specifically to traditional witchcraft as found in a lot of cultures, believe that some among us have the capability of infecting that ancestral line or generational curses. We can also heal trauma or infections in that ancestral line, that ancestral astral pillar of power. And of course, you don't need witches. You can totally hurt and damage your own ancestral pillar, self inflicted harms on yourself or on your own children. So we have this folk belief that children are, well, very psychic, very in tune to these pillars, but just not in a very well controlled or conscious way. So when you hurt children in your family line, they are unconsciously, unknowingly passing that harm on into the ancestral pillar through their own very powerful, very psychic connections to that pillar. There isn't yet a filter between them and that pillar. Now that pillar is infected or wounded in a certain way by self-inflicted wounds, and as more people are born into this family line, they inherit these wounds because they're connected to that pillar thing. And that's one folk spiritual explanation of generational trauma. Adopted children can also gain psychic access to these ancestral pillars through their collective consent or psychic invitation by the family. So, just so we're clear, we're not leaving out adopted children. In fact, adopted children are unique in that they're connected to all of these different pillars, the ancestral lines of their adopted family, by way of having been, in effect, initiated into integration with that pillar, and by birthright, their own genetic ancestral lines. Using spiritual explanations still, and still working within the ontology formed in traditional witchcraft and folk shamanism, adopted children are more likely, generally speaking, to experience some form of spiritual cognitive dissonance as a result of being connected to all of these pillars and not really getting the proper training to know how to reconcile it all in a psychic way for themselves. Biological children, because of the ritualistic rite of conjugal relations between parents, that intercourse of the parents is how, again, still using just these spiritual, folksy rationales, why they don't experience the same cognitive dissonance despite inheriting the pillars from different ancestral parental lines. Speaking very narrowly to applications in traditional witchcraft, when you honor your ancestral lines and feed those lines with your reverence, that psychic thread connecting you to that pillar of power gets to become really, really strong. All craft is just pulling together different energies, alchemizing them, and using this alchemized energy to create material change. There isn't just one single limited source of power you can pull from. There's so many different varieties. The ancestral source of power for magic and witchcraft is just one of those varieties, but a very, very powerful and potent one. So you'd be remiss to not figure it out, you know? Earlier, I talked about soul dualism and how the yang part of the soul after death houses the karma and reincarnates. The yin part stays in this sort of earthly astral realm. It's of the earth, of this physical universe, but the non-physical component or counterpart. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, that kind of thing. And I had mentioned that this yin part houses memory. That's why your memory of your ancestors, even the memory of the clan name or the family name, can be enough to activate the connection to feed into their strength. People always ask how. How do I do that? How do I connect to my ancestors, especially if I don't even have any records of who they were? The answer to that question is you already know, and you actually know better than I do. I'm not connected to that line. A diviner or shaman can visit your ancestral astral temple and bring back some insights, but that's a very specific intentional process. So it's not even going to be generic words of wisdom. That's something that has to be done on a case specific level. So that's what I mean. I can't just blurt out generic advice, one size fits all. But again, the good news is, like I said, you already know how. I think a lot of us doubt what we don't fully understand, Faith comes by really hard these days, and faith is really truly a key to spiritual forms of power. Fear can block us, like I said, lack of faith, resentment, lack of sincere respect. I mean, maybe that's more Confucian and specific to Asian culture, I don't know. No matter what it is specifically, it's a mental block you have put up yourself, whether you meant to or not. So you have to be the one to remove that block. Or you find a shaman to do it. But I mean, I have a lot of thoughts or opinions about that too. Now, one thing I might be able to offer in this video is a way to lead you to the door, but afterward, you're the one who has to walk through it on your own. We're going to start with something you've heard before, I'm sure. Put up an ancestor altar. Photos are generally really good, but if you don't have those, they're not a requirement. Memory is. You have to create a nexus between the physical world and this astral psychic world through the enactment of memory. And you can really get creative with that if you want. In Asian cultures, one way is this wood plaque with the family or clan name painted in calligraphy on the plaque, and that can be placed on an ancestor altar to activate or empower it with memory. Offerings, even the wrong offerings, just like when you get your mom or dad the wrong gift for Mother's Day or Father's Day, right? Even the wrong offerings cultivates the power of memory and begins to strengthen your ancestral psychic connection. Here's where we get to that second part I said I wanted to talk about. You don't have to. You're not a better witch because you know how to harness ancestral power for your craft. In fact, it runs the risk of making you a lazy witch because it's really powerful, really potent, and you come to rely on it so much like a crutch that you forget about how to rely on your own wits and how to be scrappy with your magic or personal power. To say the witch has to do ancestor work like it's a requirement of the witch to be powerful in craft, it's almost like saying gas or fossil fuel is the only way to generate electricity. In most places right now, and in terms of the energy source most communities today tap into, yeah, that may feel about right, but it's not. We know that. Hydroelectric power is another option, wind, solar, nuclear. There's no denying this immediate and direct, handed to you on a silver platter, almost connection to power through your ancestors. But not all of us are trust fund babies, am I right? Also, I'm not overlooking the very real issue that not every witch wants to be connected to their ancestors. Maybe it's a source of power you don't want to use. So, what do you do when the circumstances of your life means ancestral power isn't necessarily the clearest or even best option for you? Of the earth, there are so many varieties of power the witch can get fueled up on from the astral realm of this world. Animal spirits is a big one in so many cultures, working with different forms of divinity, meditation, and forms of energy healing or personal energy strengthening, so you're really learning how to rely on just yourself. I mean, you know all this stuff already, right? Sorry, my thoughts are nonlinear today. Back to trying to lead you to the door. For those who really want to get into ancestral work and strengthen their psychic connection to this particular pillar of power you have access to, you can try this. And this is going to be coming mainly from traditional witchcraft in my culture. Clear a space in your home where you want to put up a very simple ancestor altar, just to start, because this is assuming you have no idea where to start. And also this will be specifically with the witch and a witch's purpose in mind. Leave out a bowl of salt, or you just leave out rock salt, which we believe spiritually purifies the area. Burning incense? Really good. But here's a very big caveat to that. It has to be incense that you kind of naturally love. It just brings you untold amounts of joy or evokes something familiar and wonderful to you. I believe that predilection for the incense is intuitive knowledge. So if you're forcing yourself to burn something that is making your allergies act up, that you just don't love, don't do it. Your intuition is telling you that's not the right path for you. Listen to your body, listen to your senses. If you have photos, family Bibles, family trees, family records, heirlooms, these are all things to put in this altar space to start. If you've got nothing, get a round mirror like this. I like the dark mirrors where it's made of obsidian or black onyx, but honestly, a regular round mirror works just fine. You want to avoid plastic because plastic is made from a polymerization process that's, let's just use crude magical occult terms, shall we? Plastic is such sophisticated alchemy or chemistry that the plastic in and of itself is interfering with your magic, interfering with the spirit, because plastic itself is a form of magic. Science. We talked about this already, didn't we? So it's not that you can't use plastic or that you can't find a way to overcome or neutralize its influence as inherently a form of pre-existing magic going on in your sacred space. It's just that it's probably going to be easier to start with a blank slate energetically. It's like trying to play the piano when the radio in the room is already on. Set up the mirror in that sacred space you want to designate as your ancestor altar. Yin and this aspect of soul being yin means it's easier to harness with a lot of yin because yang neutralizes yin. Late at night, in darkness, evening hours, that's yin. Autumn, winter, that's yin. Then you light a single candle for that flame. Fire is yang, lighting the flame is that little dot of yang in the yin part of the yin and yang symbol. Is all of this kind of theoretically coming together in your mind? Gaze at that candle flame, then through it into the dark mirror at your own reflection during a late evening hour. And then just chant, I want to remember, I want to remember, I want to remember. In the beginning, this can feel super awkward, and you just kind of have to keep at it and pull through the awkwardness until it totally stops feeling awkward and you're way, way into it. Once it feels like, holy crap, something is happening. And it can take days, as in like maybe the first time you try, you were like, what? No, I feel like an idiot. It's fine. But don't give up. Try another evening. And again, you need to keep showing up for yourself. You can't quit on yourself. Show up over and over again. So you just keep doing this. I want to remember. I want to remember. Looking at your reflection in the dark mirror that's on your ancestor altar through the candle flame you've lit that's in between you and the mirror. And keep at this practice until you get that, holy shit, something is happening feeling. Then it's kind of like affirmation time. You change your chant to, I remember, I remember, I remember. You keep saying, I remember, and you look at the reflection in the mirror, and at some point, something will appear there, an image, a scene, symbols. I don't know your brain, but something out of the ordinary will happen. You will have that, holy shit, something is happening feeling again. And now change to chanting something like, I am here to claim my inheritance. If those exact words don't sit well with you, it can be, I am here to receive. I mean, you have to craft your own words, honestly, but you get the point. You get the meaning that you need to convey and be able to express, right? And then, yeah, that's kind of it. Do divinations or, divinatory readings. Keep on the lookout for signs and omens. Pay attention to your dreams. Pay attention to what comes to you when you're meditating or even when you're daydreaming. Daydreaming is such a powerful psychic connection point between astral and physical. And that, my dear, is how you figure out how you need to be working with your own ancestral powers, assuming that's what you want. Because, like I said, you don't have to. It's one of many options availed to the witch. Now it's your turn to share something with me. What's your perspective on ancestral work? What does the tradition you practice say about it? What have been your personal experiences? I'd love to know.